Hey guys, what's up? It's Deathknight here, and today we're going to look at the Blood Deathknight in Legion. So the changes from WOD to Legion, or patch 7.0 even, what you're going to expect to see, what the talents are like, what abilities are gone and we've got now, stats, the artifact weapon, and whatever else I can think to throw in there. So getting straight into this, guys, what is gone abilities and talents wise? So straight away, rune pairing is gone. So there's it's now 6 runes that are all just death all the time. Dark Simulacrum's gone, which is a bummer. Icebound Fortitude's gone. Bone Shield has changed now. It's now the charges of Bone Shield are now applied via an ability called Marrowrend that we'll talk about. Rune Tap is now a talent. Outbreak's gone. Army of the Dead is gone. Chains of Ice, Death Coil, Empower Rune Weapon, Icy Touch, Plague Strike, and Presences all gone as well. Talents wise, what you will see different when you are logging into Legion. Plague Bearer is gone. Plague Leech, Unholy Blight, Lichborn, Death's Advance, Chillblains, Asphyxiate, Runic Empowerment, Runic Corruption, Death Pact, Death Siphon, Gorfiend's Grasp is gone from a talent, but it's now a baseline ability. Remorseless Winter, Desecrated Ground, Necrotic Plague, Defile's gone, which I had a big sad face about, and so is Breath of Cindy. And Anti-Magic Zone is also gone. So that's everything that is in the past now. So what do we have come Legion? Well, Heartstrike is back in the game, and it's pretty much our main source of runic power generation. Instantly strike the target and one other enemy nearby, causing 225% physical damage, reduces the enemy's movement speed by 50% for 8 seconds. It costs 1 rune to use, and it generates 15 runic power. Death Strike is our main source of active mitigation, and it's pretty much our runic power dump now. So rather than costing runes anymore, it now costs runic power. So it hits like a truck. It deals 225% physical damage and heals you for 20% of all damage taken in the last 5 seconds. It has a minimum heal of 7% of your maximum health, and as I said, it costs 45 runic power to use now, and it's pretty much the runic power dump. Marrowrend, so this is a brand new ability that we've never seen before. Smash the target, dealing 350% physical damage and generating 3 charges of Bone Shield. So if you're not aware, Bone Shield surrounds you with a barrier of whirling bones. It reduces all damage you take by 20% and increases your haste by 10%. Each damaging attack will consume a charge of Bone Shield, and the Bone Shield will last 30 seconds or until all charges are consumed. Marrowrend costs 2 runes to use and generates 20 runic power. Dancing Rune Weapon summons a rune weapon for 8 seconds that mirrors your melee attacks and bolsters your defenses. While active, you gain 40% parry, and this is on a 3-minute cooldown. Death's Caress. Reach out with Necrotic Tendrils, dealing shadow damage and applying Blood Plague to your target. So Blood Plague is the new disease, and this is kind of like Outbreak now, I guess, in a different sort of way. So Blood Plague is a shadowy disease that drains health from the target over 24%. So it applies Blood Plague, and it has a leech. So really, it's nothing like Outbreak. Blood Boil deals a massive amount of attack power, 375% attack power, shadow damage, and infests all enemies within 10 yards with Blood Plague, which, as I said, is that disease with the leech. You've got 2 charges of Blood Boil. It's on a 7.5 second recharge, and it does massive AoE damage. Mind Freeze is still our interrupt. Smash the target's mind with cold, interrupting spell casting and preventing any spells from that school being cast for 3 seconds. Every other school's interrupt actually stops it for 4 seconds, so I don't know why the DK's got 3 seconds. It's on a 15-minute cooldown. Death and Decay corrupts the targeted ground, causing shadow damage over 10 seconds to targets within the area. While you remain within the area, your Heartstrike will hit 3 additional targets, 1 rune to use, 10 runic power generated. Vamp Blood, embrace your undeath, increasing your maximum health by 30% and increasing all healing received by 30% for 10 seconds on a 1.5-minute cooldown. Dark Command is our taunt on the 8-second cooldown as normal. Anti-Magic Shell is still here, surrounds you in an Anti-Magic Shell for 5 seconds, absorbing magic damage and preventing the application of harmful magic effects. Damage absorbed generates rune power, and that's on a 1-minute cooldown. Raise Ally is still with us as our combat res. It has no runic cost to it anymore. It's on a 10-minute cooldown, and it will bring someone back with 60% health and 20% mana. Wraithwalk is a new ability. Sidestep into the Shadowlands, breaking root effects and increasing your movement speed by 70% for 3 seconds. During this time, all movement impairing effects are suppressed, but any action will cancel the effect. This is on a 1 minute cooldown, and it's pretty much our mobility boost because DKs have no other mobility options. Gorfane's Grasp. Shadowy tendrils coil around all enemies within 20 yards of a hostile or friendly target, pulling them to that location. It is now on a 3 minute cooldown, so it's a big change from the 1 minute cooldown, and WOD it's now on a 3 minute cooldown. Death Grip is still here. Harness the energy that surrounds all binds all matter. That did not make sense. Drawing the target towards you, you grab them and you bring them to you. Forcing the enemy to attack you, increasing your threat generated by 200% for 3 seconds. Not that threat is ever an issue for tanks anymore. And it's on a 25-second cooldown. Asphyxiate is a baseline, lifts the enemy target off the ground, crushing their throat with dark energy and stunning them for 5 seconds on a 45-second cooldown. I'm glad to see that as a baseline ability. Passives, we've got Crimson Scourge. Your auto attacks on targets infected with your Blood Plague have a chance to make your next Death and Decay cost no runes and reset its cooldown. Mastery Blood Shield. Each time you heal yourself with Death Strike, you gain 16% of the base amount healed as a physical damage absorption shield. Also increases your attack power by 8%. Veteran of the Third War increases stamina by 25% and armor by 15%. And we've still got things like Deathgate, Path of Frost, On a Pale Horse, Rune Forging. I just haven't listed them because they're not overly that important, and they're still there and they haven't changed. So lastly, the baseline artifact ability I want to throw into here, which is called Consumption. So it strikes all enemies in front of you with a hungering attack that deals 250% physical damage and heals you for 100% of that damage, and it's on a 45-second cooldown. So that is pretty much the baseline kit with the artifact that DKs are going to have, or Blood DKs are going to have, come Legion 7.0 changes. Now, talking about now, I'm going to sort of go into the gameplay around the Blood Deathknight and how the abilities will sort of function. And as you can already see, guys, things have really changed, and that's the same way for every single tank in Legion. You're not going to find one that goes in and plays the exact same way they did in WOD, because they've all been stripped down bare bones and changed rather dramatically. In a really simple state for a Blood Deathknight, like in low-level easy mode content, pretty much you're just going to run around spamming Heart Strike and spending your runic power with Death Strike. And to make it really simplified as such, when you hit a higher level like Mythic 4, 5 plus and raiding content, while you're progressing, you're just going to be hoping you have enough haste to spam Mararend to keep Blood Shield up 100%, Bone Shield up 100% of the time, filling any gap you have with HS, Heart Strike, and then Death Striking to spend your runic power. So that's like a super simplified version of how you would play a Blood DK, and you'd be dropping Death and Decay off cooldown pretty much. So getting into it a little bit more in depth. So Heartstrike is our runic generator. Mararend, whenever you are at 6 or 7 or below 6 or 7 stacks on your Bone Shield, you'll be wanting to use your Mararend to top up your stacks. The active mitigation buff at the moment is being applied by Mararend. Whether or not that still stays in game that way, I'm not sure. It will give us 2 active mitigation abilities. It's not listed in the spellbook as that, but at the moment it is giving the active mitigation buff. Death Strike, it hits like a truck and it's our heal. So if you're in no danger and needing a heal, use it as a DPS option because it hits like a truck. Otherwise, if you know you're going to take damage, it's coming up or you need active mitigation, you use it for that because it's our main source of active mitigation. Vampiric Blood's going to have a massive impact on DK playstyle, I think. So there's some talents and some artifact traits that all tie really well into Vamp Blood. And coupled with the talent Red Thirst, you're actually going to get a fair bit of uptime on your Vampiric Blood. And also there's a major trait in the artifact called Umbilicus Eternus, and that's all going to tie in really well together. Death and Decay, you're pretty much going to be dropping it off cooldown. Wraithwalk, as I said when I mentioned it, is our mobility, our speed boost, because it's pretty much our only one we've got. Dancing Rune Weapon, you can use it on the pull if you're tanking first and you're able to generate your 10 stacks of Bone Shield really quickly via Mararend. If you're raiding though and you were tanking second, you obviously wouldn't use it, and you would use it as a better time. But again, Dancing Rune Weapon will still play a really vital role in regards to keeping your stacks of Mararend up, as you're able to generate them so quickly once you pop it. And also the parry stops your bone shields, your 40% parry increase stops your bone shields from being eaten while you're building them up. Anti-magic shell, same as it's always done, nature and magic damage reduction. Obviously make life easier on your healer if you're in big situations with magic damage, and use AMS. Blood boil, pretty much use it whenever it's free and it does a shitload of AoE damage. And consumption, which is our artifact ability, it's a big DPS hit, or use it as an emergency button if you need to. So that is pretty much it from a baseline gameplay sort of stance. Stats wise, what you'll be looking at, the removal of multi-strike. Obviously in Warlords we were very multi-strike heavy, multi-strike mastery. Now we're going to be very much haste crit, which sounds weird again. Haste is pretty much going to provide us with more runes, which is going to turn into more death strikes via the heart strikes. So the more haste we have, the higher uptime we're going to be able to maintain on Bone Shield 2 due to the reduced CD on Marrow Rend. And that's going to be extremely important come Mythic 5+ progression rating, because you will need to be trying to keep your Bone Shield up at all times, otherwise you will just be getting hacked to pieces. Crit is going to be the other probably stat that parries up really well. It's going to provide parry, which will prevent some of your bone shields from being eaten off. It means there's going to be more time to heart strike, possibly if that's the case, which will result in more runic power, which will result in more death strikes again. It'll also try into a higher uptime on Unending Thirst, providing us with more leech as well, and crit will also give us the extra DPS boost, which everyone loves extra DPS. Mastery really hasn't held its stat weight from Warlords of Draenor. You would probably need an obscene amount of mastery now to make it actually worthwhile to beat hate crit or even versatility. So looking at the talents, guys. So talents wise, level 56, Bloodworms, Heartbreaker, and Blood Drinker. So Bloodworms, your auto attack critical strikes have a chance to summon a Bloodworm. Bloodworms deal minor damage to your target for 15 seconds and then burst. They heal you for 5% of your missing health. If you drop below 50% health, your Bloodworms will immediately burst and heal you. Heartbreaker, Heartstrike generates 3 additional runic power per target hit. And Blood Drinker drains health from your target over 3 seconds. You can move, parry, dodge, and use defensive abilities while channeling this ability. So from this row, guys, Heartbreaker I think is a real standout pick. The extra runic generation you're going to get, because it's 3 additional runic power per target that it hits. So it's going to be insane. Dropping Death and Decay using a Heart Strike with Heartbreaker, it's a huge win on this row, I think. So level 57, I have fucked up, sorry. Raid, Decomposition, Soul Gorge, and Spectral Deflection. Raid Decomposition, your Death and Decay deals damage 50% more often, and while you're in Death and Decay, you generate 20% more runic power. Soul Gorge, consume your blood plagues within 30 yards, dealing shadow damage to each infected enemy, and empowering you for 24 seconds with up to 15% rune generation per plague. Plagues closer to expiration grant more runic generation. Blood Boil no longer applies Blood Plague if you take this. Spectral Deflection, attacks that deal more than 25% of your maximum health will consume a second Bone Shield charge to further reduce the damage you take. So out of this row, guys, Raid Decomposition or Spectral Deflection are certainly going to be the picks, I think. And I think Raid Decomposition is definitely going to be the winner there. But it will be interesting to see how the math stacks up between Raid Decomposition and Spectral Deflection. But at the moment, I'm running with Raid Decomposition. Level 58, Ossuary, Blood Tap, and Anti-Magic Barrier. So Ossuary, while you have at least 5 Bone Shield charges, the cost of Death Strike is reduced by 5 runic power. Additionally, your maximum runic power is increased by 10. Blood Tap consumes Shadowy Essence, generates 1 rune. Recharge time reduced by 1 second whenever a Bone Shield charge is consumed. Anti-Magic Barrier, Anti-Magic Shell also increases your maximum health by 25% for 10 seconds. So they're all actually not horrible options in that row, and probably will come down a lot to situations. Blood Tap, I think, is certainly going to be my pick. It just is going to allow you a hell of a lot more control over what you're doing, so I'm going with Blood Tap. But Ossuary doesn't sound horrible, and Anti-Magic Shell, Anti-Magic Barrier, sorry, on progression, things and that, doesn't sound all that horrible either. But Blood Tap is what I'm running with for now. Level 60, Mark of Blood, Red Thirst, and Tombstone. Mark of Blood places a Mark of Blood on an enemy for 25 seconds. The enemy's damaging auto attacks will also heal their victims for 2% of maximum health. Red Thirst, spending runic power will decrease the remaining cooldown on Vamp Blood by 2 seconds per 10 runic power. And Tombstone, consume all bone charges. For each charge consumed, you gain 3 runic power and absorb damage equal to 3% of your maximum health for 8 seconds. So Red Thirst here is my pick. As I was talking about before, the importance of how Vamp Blood is going to play into our playstyle. Red Thirst is going to tie in really well with Umbilicus Eternus, which is the artifact trait that I'll speak about when we get there. But Red Thirst is my pick all the way on this row. Level 75, Tightening Grasp, Tremble Before Me, and March of the Damned. So Tightening Grasp reduces the cooldown of Gorfiend's Grasp by 60 seconds, and your Death and Decay also reduces the movement speed of enemies within its radius by 70%. Tremble Before Me, enemies damaged by your Death and Decay have a chance to cower in place for 3 seconds. Cannot suffer from this effect more than once every 10 seconds, and damage cancels the effect. And March of the Damned, Wraithwalk lasts 50% longer and breaks stun, snares, and root effects when it's cast. So Tightening Grasp is my pick here, especially from a PvE sense, I think, to reduce that longer cooldown now on Gorfiend's Grasp. March of the Damned may come in handy too with a longer duration on Wraithwalk in order to try and get out of encounters if you need that mobility boost. Level 90, guys, Will of Necropolis, Rune Tap, and Foul Bulwark. So Will of the Necropolis, damage taken below 35% health is reduced by 20%. Rune Tap consumes a rune to reduce all damage taken by 25% for 3 seconds. And Foul Bulwark, each charge of Bone Shield increases your maximum health by 2%. So out of this row, guys, Foul Bulwark is the one that really stands out for me. I think Rune Tap isn't a horrible choice either. It's that familiar style to reduce damage. But Foul Bulwark, with the emphasis around, especially in a progression format, getting that haste where you're able to spam Mirror End enough to maintain that uptime on your bone shields, you're going to be constantly boosting your health with that. Will of the Necropolis will probably have application if you're on progression and you're spending a hell of a lot of time with your HP below 35%, but if that's not the case, it's probably a real throw-out talent. But Foul Bulwark's probably going to be my number one pick in that row. Level 100, guys. Sorry, I fucked up again. Bone Storm, Blood Mirror, and Purgatory. Bone Storm, a whirl of bone and gore batters nearby enemies every 1 second. It deals shadow damage every 1 second and heals you for 1% of your maximum health every time it deals damage. It lasts 1 second per 10 runic power spent. Blood Mirror, afflict an enemy with Blood Mirror for 10 seconds. While active, 20% of any damage dealt to you is redirected to the target. And Purgatory, an unholy pact that prevents fatal damage. Instead, absorbing incoming healing equal to the damage prevented. It lasts 3 seconds. If any healing absorption remains when this effect expires, you will die. This effect may occur only once every 3 minutes. So Bone Storm or Purgatory are probably going to be the big common choices. Purgatory will obviously have its advantages in progression and things like that, and Bone Storm is going to be a great boost in Mythic Pluses and rating in regards to DPS as well. I think Blood Mirror, though, will really only have its application in raiding. So Bone Storm and Purgatory will probably be the two most common choices, and once you get into raiding, Blood Mirror may very well take over in that regard. But I'm yet to see any real math behind that row. So looking at the artifact now, guys. So the artifact weapon for the Blood DKs is the Maw of the Damned. And Blizzard did a fucking great job with this one. I actually don't mind the skins available for it. The baseline version of it looks absolutely fantastic. And it's just very Blood DK. So I'm actually really happy with this artifact. The ability, as we've spoke about, is called Consumption. It strikes all enemies in front of you with a hungering attack that deals 250% physical damage and heals you for 100% of that damage. So it is a great artifact ability as well. Now, the three major or golden traits, depending on what you want to call them, on the Maw of the Damned are Skeletal Shattering, which each time Bone Shield absorbs damage, it has a chance equal to your critical strike chance to absorb an additional 8% of the damage. Umbilicus Eternus, after Vampiric Blood expires, you absorb damage equal to 5 times the damage your Blood Plague dealt during Vampiric Blood. and Unending Thirst. While Blood Shield is active, you gain 50% leech, and damage dealt by Death Strike is increased by 50%. So great 3 major or golden traits there as well for Blood Deathknights. It's going to cost you 8 points from your first ability spent, or from consumption pretty much, if you want to go for the left or right one. So if you want to go for Umbilicus Eternus or Skeletal Shattering, it'll cost you 8 points. If you want to go down the bottom to Unending Thirst first, it'll cost you 12 points to get to the bottom of your artifact to get that first trait. And I probably think Unending Thirst is going to be the way that a lot of people go after first. It could be Umbilicus Eternus, but I'm probably going to put money on the fact that people will go after Unending Thirst as their first trait. Other traits available on the artifact: Sanguinarity. Fuck me. I keep fucking up the word. Other traits available on the artifact: Sanguinary Affinity. Increases damage done by 8% for 1 point. Dance of the Darkness, or Dance of Darkness, there is no that in there. Increase the duration of Dancing Rune Weapon by 2 seconds. There's 3 points for spending that one. Mouth of Hell. Dancing Rune Weapon summons a second copy of More of the Damned. While Dancing Rune Weapon is active, your Marrow Rend will generate an additional charge of Bone Rend, and there's 1 point. Iron Heart increases your armor by 2%. There's 3 points to put in that. All-Consuming Rot increases damage done by Death and Decay by 8%, and there's 3 points to put in that. Meat Shield increases your stamina by 1%, 3 points. Vein Render increases damage done by Heart Strike by 8%, 3 points. Blood Feast. Heart Strike heals you for 25% of the damage it deals, 1 point. Bone Breaker increases the damage done by Marrow Rend by 8%, and there's 3 points. Rattling Bones. Marrow Rend has a 30% chance to generate an additional charge of Bone Shield, 1 point. Vampiric Fangs. Vampiric Blood increases your maximum health by an additional 5% and increases all healing received by an additional 5%. There's 3 points. Grim Perseverance increases your parry chance by 1% for 3 points. And fuck you. Coagulopathy. Coagulopathy. Blood coagulates, so it's coagulopathy. Increases damage done by Blood Plague for 8% for 3 points. So from a tanking standpoint, it's a really decent artifact, guys. Vampiric Fangs, coupled with Unending Thirst and Red Thirst, will all complement each other really well, and it puts that real emphasis back to that haste build I spoke about, and it's going to play really well into that Vampiric Blood uptime. In terms of a higher uptime on Bone Shield, as I said, it's probably really only going to affect Mythic Plus and rating, but if that's something you are interested in, the right side of the artifact is going to provide more Bone Shield generation than the left side. Philondra on MMO Champ pretty much broke it down amazingly. He went over everyone's logs and the artifact weapon and just did a shit ton of work. And pretty much he's put it down to Dance of Darkness and Mouth of Hell mean that Dancing Rune Weapon lasts for 14 seconds on a 3-minute cooldown. So using 3 Marrow Rends in that time frame would generate 12 Bone Shield charges, which is the realistic maximum, or an extra 3 charges every 3 minutes. So that's the left side. So on the right side, Rattling Bones gives us a 30% chance for an extra Bone Shield charge. So in order to generate 3 extra Bone Shield charges, we would need to use an average of 10 Marrow Rends. And then he's capped it off with saying, do we use at least 10 Marrow Rends every 3 minutes? Of course we do. So the right side of the artifact is going to yield better Bone Shield generation than the left. But again, that's not going to be something that everyone has to concern themselves with. So just quickly in here, guys, because I signed off so fast, I didn't actually give you sort of any of my thoughts in regards to the Blood DK class after playing it for a bit, so I've edited this part in if you couldn't possibly tell. Blood DKs are really... I don't actually mind the change. It's very different to the way Blood used to play, but it's still a lot of fun, and it's a fucking ass ton of damage. In normals and probably heroics, I would say, because I haven't tested anything above. you're just going to be able to go Bone Storm, Heart Strike, Blood Boil, Death and Decay crazy. You're probably not going to even have to worry about any of your Bone Shields, and you will just be able to go nuts on damage. Getting into Mythic Plus, progression rating and things like that, the spec and the playstyle is going to become more important to what you do in regards to keeping your Bone Shield up and things like that. But a lot of damage coming out of the Blood DK certainly in earlier stages of content. And they're fun. They're still fun to play. I still enjoy the Blood DK. It's not going to beat out a Guardian or a Paladin in regards to a numbers game as such in regards to the best tank, but they are certainly still going to be viable, and it is certainly still a fun tank spec to play. So if you are a Blood DK, don't stress too bad. It is very different, 100% it is very different, but your class is still going to kick some fucking ass in dungeons and in Mythic Pluses. So that is it, guys. Thanks very much for checking out the guide. As always, like, comment, subscribe. If you got any questions, hit me up, and thanks very much for watching. I'll see you all next time. See you guys.